Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session on fostering innovation in clean power, where, as you can see, we'll hear from some great Quebec-born companies on their outlook for the transition to the low-carbon economy. And I'm sure we'll hear a bit about sort of how Quebec became such a thriving hub and ecosystem for decarbonisation technologies and innovation. I'm sure we'll hear about that a bit later on, but in the words of Quebec's Minister of Economy and Innovation, who in a BNEF interview earlier today, he puts it down to a few factors that I think we'll no doubt discuss later. Puts it down to a great location, cost competitive, environmentally friendly and stable regulations, and crucially a coherent investment strategy. So sort of tying together a lot of what the different sort of companies are doing on this session with sort of government and policy support as well. And one thing that stands out to me, especially as we've listened to other panels over the last couple of days, sort of at the New York Summit, is this transition has been one of extremes. It's both daunting but really exciting. The challenge and the required scale is unprecedented, but equally it's attainable, achievable. And it requires huge investment today, but promises even sort of greater economic rewards tomorrow. And I think that sort of those extremes is a great place for us to start. And so I'm incredibly delighted to be joined by four truly wonderful panelists to sort of share their outlook. And so to make sense of this complex and complicated world, I'd like to introduce Marc Bedard, CEO and founder of Lion Electric, Louis Tremblay, President and CEO of Add Energy, Simon Racicot-Degnaud, President of Innov HQ, and Andrée-Lise Méthot, founder and managing partner of Cycle Capital. And before diving into the session, and I promise I'll pass to you in a second, but before diving in, I'd like to highlight another Quebec-based company, Pyrowave, which isn't joining us on the panel, but which did just win the Bloomberg NEF 2021 sort of pioneers. And this is, I think, another example of just this hub of activity that we're seeing come out of Quebec and come out of sort of Canada more broadly. And Pyrowave is well, taking a step back, there are lots of chemical recyclers out there, but I think the challenge when you start combining circular economy goals and net zero goals is how to do recycling in a more sustainable way. And Pyrowave is managing to use clean electricity and to use less of it, which should well sort of benefit. And I think we'll no doubt see sort of echoes of that as we talk to the four panelists today. So we're going to leap into a few questions now for the panelists, but for everyone who's dialed in, thank you for joining us today. And we will have time for Q&A later on. And so put your questions into the Q&A chat, and I will do my utmost to get to get to all of them to make sure your voice is heard and your questions are sort of answered on the panel. But diving straight into, or now we can, I guess, move to hear from the real stars of today's session. And my introductions haven't done any of you any justice. So why don't we start off, Marc, with you, but in one or two sentences, just sort of introducing your company to the audience in case they're not familiar, and your role within it.
Sure, thank you so much, Logan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making time to meet with us today. Logan, many people are telling me that Lion is an overnight success, 12 years in the making. Lion is real, it's not an aspirational story. And it is not easy to summarize 12 years of hard work into a single sentence, but let me very briefly describe what we're doing. We are a manufacturer of electric trucks and buses. In fact, we are the electric school bus leader in North America with over 300 buses delivered, 6 million miles driven, and a great order book. And we also offer a lineup of all electric class 5 to class 8 urban trucks. All our vehicles are purpose-built to be electric, no retrofits, no hybrids. This is part of our DNA. Always offer the best quality at the lowest price.
Perfect, thank you. So challenging to squeeze 12 years into one sentence, but you succeeded. Louis, same question.
I guess a great company takes 12 years in the making, as our company, as well as Marc and Leon. Our company is the largest Canadian EV charging solution provider, operator of the Flow network. We're present across Canada and in the US. We have 40,000 chargers deployed so far. I'm the proud co-founder, president, and CEO of Flow at Energy. Perfect,
thank you. Simon?
Hi guys, very happy to be with you today. I'm the president of Innov HQ. As such, I'm responsible for all commercial subsidiaries of Hydro-Quebec. So that's Hilo, that's an aggregator with the virtual power plant and connected objects. We have Evlo, which is my background today, the energy storage batteries, and also the electric circuit, which is the largest recharge network in Canada with over 3,000 recharge stations. So we have a few companies, as you see, but one of our mission is also to stimulate the ecosystem to accelerate the energy transition. So any opportunities in that range is of interest to us.
Perfect, and I'm sure we'll touch on sort of collaboration and how those opportunities span sectors later on. But finally, Andrée-Lise.
Essentially, in a nutshell, Cycle Capital is an investor. We have $500 million under management for the companies in our portfolio in different subsectors of clean tech, like circular economy, mobility, smart grid, IoT, battery, energy efficiency. We are investor in North America, and we have a chance to be very well supported by different groups, including Hydro-Quebec, Simon Racicot, Degno Group, or Rio Tinto, Alcan, and the Government of Quebec through Investment Quebec, who's one of our major investors. Very happy to be there with amazing entrepreneur and a corporate who are really engaged in with the real commitment in the clean tech economy. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. So last year, BNEF tracked around $550 billion of investment in the energy transition. Within transport, global public charging network grew 42% in 2020. Global passenger electric vehicle sales increased 47% to over 3 million vehicles globally, and e-bus sales increased 15%. So at a global level, everything seems to be moving in the right direction. Progress is apparent. But what I'd love to do is actually, and again, let's start with you, Marc. I'd love to hear how is that global story sort of reflected at the company level? Are you seeing sort of equally tangible signs in terms of your order book, in terms of sort of investor interest in progress here?
We do, Logan. And you are right. The electric market is evolving very fast right now, and probably even faster than most of the people was expecting. When we started selling our electric buses 5 years ago, we were selling a lot of onesie, twosies. And now many fleets, they want to electrify their whole fleet because their total cost of ownership, the TCO, that I'm sure you've heard many times before, is favorable. So not only is it good for the environment, but they can also make more profit with them than with their diesel trucks. Some of our school bus customers right now have already over 20 Lion electric school buses in their fleet. And you also might have heard about our agreement with Amazon for the delivery of up to 2,500 Lion 6 and Lion 8 electric trucks over the next 5 years. We also have an order from Canadian National Railways for 50 Lion 8. Pride Group order 100 Lion 6 and Lion 8. Waste Connections and some cities ordered our fully electric refuse trucks. Con Edison and Green Mountain Power ordered our electric bucket truck. And this is just to name a few, and this is just the beginning. So I fully agree with you. Things are definitely going very well.
Fantastic. So more customers, bigger customers, more orders per customer. This is Yeah, it sort of must bring smiles to your face, and all of that probably or no doubt means more requirement for charging infrastructure. So Louis, are you seeing that uptick in activity mirrored on your side?
Yeah, definitely. We see a lot of momentum on many fronts. First, there is an acceleration in the interest, I would say, in EV charging in many jurisdictions. I'll talk about the US market today. We already had some breakthroughs in the last few years in Los Angeles, in New York City. Now we're seeing a lot more acceleration of interest in traditional jurisdiction that doesn't have a zero emission vehicle mandate, which is not surprising, but really exciting. For example, we see a great traction following our collaboration agreement with Electrada. It's a Cincinnati-based company that are helping us to expand our flow network in the Midwest in states like Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky with more than 3,000 stations. And some other very concrete signs of things picking up more and more is the acceleration of our work with strategic partners, such as utilities and car manufacturers. With utilities, we are deeply involved in discussion related both to our smart home product, also with highway corridors programs with our DC fast smart chargers. We did announce many technological integration with long-time utility software providers like AutoGrid and Virtual Peaker, again, to get ready to participate in smart energy management programs or time of use initiative. We're working with most car manufacturer to integrate our system and ensuring seamless interoperability between the station on our flow network and in the OEM's navigation system. So we definitely see things ramping up with them, and we're really excited about the upcoming announcement that we're going to share in the next coming few months.
Perfect. So lots to digest there, but one thing stood out. You talked about customers that were not surprising customers, but were new customers. There was interest from areas that didn't fall under policy jurisdictions that you'd necessarily mapped out. Is that because they see the direction of travel elsewhere? Is it in response? Are they being proactive or reactive? Are they do they see the direction of travel, or are they responding to this general demand bottom up?
I would say there is a more and more economic potential that it's being seen by many players. Where I was talking about Electrada, and this is definitely what they see, and they want to make sure like they'll be one taking the lead in the Midwest. So I really think that we're going to talk about it today, but things are accelerating, and the real potential economic of EV related technology is being shared among investor and amongst private company and entrepreneurs.
Fantastic, thank you. And Simon, moving beyond transport, a few of the companies you mentioned and technologies you mentioned sit in a power system or sit in buildings and industry. Could you talk about some of the tangible signs that there's equal momentum in that space as well? So outside of transport.
Yeah, well, and maybe I can even start with transport, because with every nice announcement almost that Marc is making, there's a Dana TM4 motor that goes into that into those vehicles. So not all of them, but most of them. So we're very happy, and that's a company that we have a participation of. Also on the electric circuit, I see the buzz. Just the last year, we launched a new app for our recharge network, but it's also a trip planner. And within a week, it reached super high levels in the App Store. And we're now the first app to be incorporated in the Apple CarPlay. So you see the buzz around that clearly on the transport side. And on the other businesses, high-low that we launched in August had a very, very good reception locally. And we had a very favorable winter. being able to manage the demand peaks with Hydro-Quebec. And also on the battery, since we've launched Evlo, that was just last December, we've had a lot of attraction, and we were able to announce our first contract in Europe. Of course, we are using some of our batteries for the utilities in Quebec, for Hydro-Quebec, but we're seeing the interest coming from the outside world as well. So very, very exciting time.
Perfect. And on Andrée-Lise, let's bring you in here, because we've talked about this before, where there have been moments over the last 15, 20 years, and I touched upon this in my BNEF talk yesterday, where we felt excited, and then it's sort of yet to, and then I think that sort of excitement sort of plateaued and sort of took in tangible progress sort of took time to materialize. But does this time feel different in your mind? And if so, what's changed?
In my humble opinion, I have the feeling that the pandemic momentum is now accelerating, and we have a lot of signs of that. A lot of money is still available. Many governments, including US, EU, UK, Canada, and others, have a clear orientation for green growth. We have a lot of amazing entrepreneurs. We can see that today with major technology to deploy. But another driver is the appetite for green technology by consumers and big corporations. We can see that with Evlo today, Simon and their project with Hilo. But we have, in my point of view, a perfect alignment. And Cycle Capital can calibrate this very well, because we have a chance to have a lot of co-investors around the world, including BMW, Toyota, and others who are really active to make sure the new green play will be in a reality in few years. As we know, it's always about data. When I started in this business in 2009, the global number of closed clean tech deals globally was around 700. Last year, 2,000 deals. It's incredible in 10 years. This represents 3 times increase during the same period. And if you look in terms of money, in 2009, it was $6 billion US. Last year, $23 billion. And it's totally fabulous. It's 4 times increase for a sector who's just starting. And just remember, when we were in IT world 30 years ago, it's the same wave. But now the real challenge will be to be very efficient and coherent with different programs, different type of investors around the table, and make sure we can deploy very efficient, I would say, very efficiency, with a lot of efficiency, our intention to make sure things will really happen. Because the challenge, we have a lot of technology, but I'm not sure if we're not coherent, if we don't have a real collaboration, we will be enough fast to fight climate change. And at the end, it's our challenge.
Indeed, and actually, one piece that you mentioned there is the investment landscape is clearly different now compared to what it was a decade ago. And so Marc, let's come back to you there. Of how has Lion Electric been funded to date, and what are your plans over the next sort of 12 months? Because I hear there's big news.
No, you're right. And so many things happened in the last 12 years. So many things happened, Logan, in terms of technology, but in terms of funding as well. Founded Lion in 2008, and I started with almost nothing. And then we went through a few rounds of financing, one in 2011, another one in 2015, and finally in 2017, when Power Corporation of Canada became one of our shareholders. And all those investors, a lot of people don't know that, are still Lion shareholders today. So nobody left, even if there was a lot of secondary, that was available at some point. I think this is awesome. And now you might have heard that we have decided to go to the public market, and this is what you were alluding to, obviously. So our final vote will take place in less than 2 weeks on April 23rd, and we expect to go public a few days after on the New York Stock Exchange and the TSX under the ticker LEV. And this transaction will bring about $500 million to Lion. This money will be used to build our battery plant and innovation center that we announced about 3 weeks ago with Premier Trudeau and Prime Minister Legault, in which the Canadian and the Quebec governments are investing $100 million Canadian. And also this amount of money will be used to build our manufacturing plant in the United States. And this plant will have a capacity of 20,000 vehicles per year. This is very, very exciting.
Fantastic. And sticking with you just for a second, you talked about investments in battery assembly and the vehicles themselves, and both being located in North America. Why is that so important in terms of the sort of the tightness, I guess, in the structure of the supply chain?
You mean in terms of local manufacturing, I guess?
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Logan, I mean, for us, I mean, manufacture an electric truck or an electric bus in a market where we sell it is key. So right now we do have a manufacturing capacity of 2,500 units, which is great, but we're shooting at being at 23,000 units within the next 2 years. So we need to increase that manufacturing capacity. We're creating local jobs. We want to make sure that local sourcing is key, and this is key in our business plan right now. So we're buying in America. I mean, something that is being built in America is key to us. Buying in Canada, something that was built in Canada as well. So, and also to comply with the the Buy American Act, the Buy Canadian Act, to be as a lot of people are aware of. This is part of our business plan, and this is key to us.
Indeed, and with batteries in particular, batteries sort of naturally are likely to move towards where demand is as well in terms of sort of battery production. So that makes sense, and I think your point aligns very much with Andrée-Lise's point around sort of governments and stimulus funding and sort of and the angles and perspectives on that. But Louis, let's skip to you, and it'll be great to hear more about your journey funding wise over the last few years as well, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, and maybe before Logan, let me jump into the local production and then what Marc has just talked about it. For us, it's been the same since the last 20 years. We've learned how to manufacture locally. And we brought economies of scale in Quebec, and it's going to continue to increase. And as the market evolves, like we see the opportunity to produce at the south of the border and bring, I would say, the knowledge we've developed with a local supplier in Quebec, like Rio Tinto. We were talking about Rio Tinto with Andrée-Lise earlier, that really help us to scale our production capacity. And now it's the time we see where we can, replicate that success at the south of the border. So jumping back to your question, we've been fortunate, I would say, historically to be supported by Quebec institutional investors like Investissement Québec and CDPQ. And the investment ecosystem in Quebec was both very useful to fund our growth, giving the means for us to grow, but also providing, I would say, guidance to position us well to be able to attract some domestic private capital like McCain & Bennett. And also where I'm really proud of our recent announcement, it's our first American equity partner investors in the name of Energy Impact Partners, well known in North America, as part of our last funding. So to your question about how we're going to use the recent financing round, it's really intended to help us to accelerate, to fund the acceleration of the growth in USA. That market is really dynamic, so we want to build our teams on the ground. We want to be able to invest ongoingly in innovation, because as we know, the US market is particularly competitive. So needless to say that the last financing round was really timely as the market is getting paced. And we have a compelling strategy for the US market. And I feel so fortunate that I'm surrounded with investors that share the same vision.
That's great to hear. And actually, on one point you mentioned around the market's becoming more competitive, especially as you look south of the border. Are you feeling more pressure to raise more funds to keep pace with US companies or competitors across North America, or do you think the space is actually large enough for the pie is big enough for companies of many different sort of types and angles to all succeed?
Yeah. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think there is undeniable momentum for opportunities, I would say, around the energy transition, the EV adoption, and definitely, as Andrée-Lise was referring to, we're really excited to see a growing appreciation among investors for the economic potential of EV-related technologies, as charging network operator like us. So this is good for all companies, I think, our competitors, and for us. So to tell the truth, the pressure that I see and that I feel sometimes does not come so much from competitor. It comes from, I would say, the market that keeps on accelerating. And an accelerating market means that the speed at which we scale also has to be greater. So it's frankly a good problem to have, better than other problems like COVID, I would say, but it's creating some pressure, and a direct impact is it translates into the needs of accelerating capital expense in the coming months.
Indeed, if it's any consolation, I share that pressure at BNEF. There's so many topics to write about, so many companies such as yours to track. But Simon, you sort of come at this from a slightly different perspective, I guess, where you can also choose companies to make investments in and choose partnerships. Could you talk about the variety of approaches sort of at your fingertips there?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at typically Hydro-Quebec has been funded, the R&D directly through the research center. We have over 350 research scientists. But in today's world, with the cycle times becoming shorter and shorter, I think we mentioned it, Andrée-Lise, as well. We need to be, time to market is of the essence. So I believe it will be a mix in the future. We will keep our internal development, internal innovation. But we'll be opening more and more to the outside world. Being through taking equity shares in companies, or just collaboration, and anything that can accelerate. And for example, in the fall, we want to have a large open innovation exercise. To be able to ease the food production. And to reach a higher level of autonomy. So how it's going to play out, will it be a participation in a company? Will it be a new company that we start? We're open to anything as long as it speeds the transition again. I think that has to be our end goal. And collaboration will and people that will want to collaborate will have a play in the future. People that try to do it all themselves on their own, on their side, will be left behind. So I think that's going to be key for the future, to be open to any option. That makes sense, and I think it speaks to this story that's common across all four of you. From what I'm hearing of, we're not just talking about growth, but we're talking about change. Like sort of the way in which investment worked, or the type of investor will be different in a few years to what it was a few years ago, and same with everything else. But on Andrée-Lise, a question for you. So, I mean, you have a great view of the broader market and sort of investment into the space. How important have local hubs been to some of the companies in your portfolio to sort of help them get off the ground?
Yeah, but first thing I want to say, I'm totally agree with Simon. It's time for open innovation, and we need all forces around the table to make this amazing revolution. But it's absolutely important, and it's important to be supported by local investors, the government, and others. But at the end, we need to play the big game. And we need to be in competition with others around the world. But let me give you a few numbers about Canada and Quebec. And I think it's interesting to see how we grow this economy together, government, investor, corporate, entrepreneur. Let's give you a perspective. The US, the portion of the Quebec capital raise in the last few years, it's around 40% of all potential money raised in the market in Canada. It's a good indication of the real vivacity we have. And it's not random. We have Lyon Electric, we have a chance to have Add Energy, we have this initiative with Hydro-Québec, we have Enercam, we have a big players in the market who will build and grow in their local market first, supported by big hubs of investor, government, legislation, all of that. And now it's time to go outside. It's time to perform outside. And how we can assess, it's very interesting time for them. I think the SPACs market actually in US, it's a good indication. And we need to be in this round with others in North America. Just give you some numbers. The SPAC market today, it's around last year in 2020, 22 clean tech companies have successfully de-SPAC in the market. It's 40% of all SPACs and IPO market dedicated to clean tech. Quebec, it's 8 million people. And we have one of them with us, Lion Electric today. And it's a great accomplishment. It's just only 8 million people in Quebec. And because we have this clear view about green economy, green energy, make this transformation, it's possible for us to have success in the SPAC market. Give you another perspective about this amazing market. It's the fact we can attract a lot of investors locally, but outside of Quebec and outside of Canada. In many deals in our portfolio, we have people from Asia, Europe, US, and they are all co-investors and building these companies very well embedded in Canada, but ready to deploy it around the world. And I think to have this local view, this hub view, it's really important at the beginning, but when the company are more mature, they need to fight and they need to export. Because the Quebec market and the Canadian market, it's a very small market. Our market is the world. And our innovation and our entrepreneurs can export very well with a lot of success. And it's what we can observe in the Canadian market, actually.
So I'm gonna leap in there because there's a danger that there's a groundswell of optimism on the panel, and it's clearly my role to sort of to nip this in the bud, or at least to sort of put some context in there, and so why don't Simon, why don't we start with you here? But actually, I'd love to hear from everyone on this question. Like, so we agreed that there's been a lot of recent progress, that momentum's growing, but what I'm hearing from all of you is that things need to go quicker. Sort of everything needs to accelerate, and things, and there are. And the implicit assumption, I guess, is that there are barriers there that are sort of constraining this market, constraining this opportunity. So, Simon, why don't we start with you? Of like, what do you see as the biggest obstacles to an accelerated transition to a low carbon economy?
Well, I think, well, I come back to the collaboration for sure. We need to have the entire ecosystem work together. And that's from startups, established companies, the academic world, and most importantly, the customers, to be together, to work, and to really do it in an open mind standpoint. We also need to have, I believe, competitors work more together. Because having a much bigger pie and having just a piece of that pie is probably a better end story than having a small little pie all by yourself. So I think we need to all ask ourselves, how can we be an enabler from that transition, which is more than the energy transition, it's a cultural transition. And I think so. Once we're in that mindset, we're gonna be able to go faster. And then, of course, our regulations will need to adapt. Because a lot of our institutions have been built for a long time in the last century, and now things are going so fast that we need to have that agility. So our governments, our regulation will clearly need to follow this, I believe, in the future.
So there's a cultural change, there's agility, and clearly collaboration. And actually, Louis, let's bring you in here, because one of the pieces you mentioned in your opening statement was actually the importance of a seamless experience for a customer. And I assume that means collaboration, or some kind of sort of integration across competitors, across different sort of charging infrastructure platforms. But why don't you start with that, and then let's have a think about some of the barriers as well.
Yeah, no, I would say that the customer is at the forefront, and I would say historically the biggest barriers we had it's definitely this, is that the customer had an hesitation to believe into the EV transition. As long as there is still room for some people to question the inevitability of the transition to electric vehicle, the effect was to slow the commitment of resources, government, and every one of us to make the transition happen. So in other words, psychological barriers in customer mind, in many people's mind, had the effect of creating practical barriers. So what I find really exciting now is that most of this hesitation, and probably you're right, Andrée-Lise, the pandemic has bring something around people, and we see it fading away. So many governments, including the new Biden administration, are now giving clear signals that there will be a phase out of gas-powered vehicles. So many car manufacturers are also doing the same and making their commitment to electrify their entire fleet very public. So this is exciting. This is very exciting. Another major barrier that is about to be removed is the existence of a price difference between EVs and gas-powered car. According to BNEF, in 2014, there will be no price difference. EVs model will still be relatively expensive, but they won't be expensive more than the comparable internal combustion engine. So 2024 is just around the corner. Once the price argument become moot, then we have the responsibility on the EV charging front to make sure that the infrastructure is ready for the surge in sales of EVs. Currently, I think we've been able to deploy charging infrastructure in an okay pace, even though it was quite challenging. But as the number of EVs will spark on the road, we need to make sure that EV charging is not a barrier, and that we don't take, I would say, the last 10 years or 12 years as a complacency, because I would say the market is in front of us. So knowing this, it is clear to me that we need to sustain large-scale investment in the development of charging infrastructure, and by extension, in EV charging network. Like us, we need to grow our capacity and make sure we're able to meet the demand in a timely manner.
So Marc, lots of sort of acknowledged barriers for you to take your pick from, or to pick your own. But what's holding you back, if anything?
Nothing is holding us back, Logan, to be honest. And you're right. I mean, when you said it in your question at the beginning, speed, you mentioned speed, and a lot of people have been talking about speed as well. So speed is the key word right now. Things need to move faster right now, not in 4 or 5 years from now. So the way the people used to do things need to change. And to do that, we need long-term commitments. We're looking for long-term commitments from our customers. Our suppliers are looking for long-term commitments from us, and we're looking for long-term commitments from our governments as well. And well, you've seen some regulatory changes already, but they need to happen now. And a very good example is with the ACT. The ACT rule in California is a very good example where the truck OEMs have no choice than to start selling electric trucks in the very near future. And you've also seen the very favorable regulatory tailwinds from the Biden administration, as it was mentioned before. So we need that. And also, even if the TCO, the total cost of ownership of an electric truck, is already favorable to the one of a diesel truck in most cases, because the initial price is still higher than the diesel one, incentives are needed for the next few years. So Louis was mentioning 2024, and I mean, I think it's a good date, but for the next few years, we still need those incentives to reduce the electric sticker price and help the operators to transition their fleet to electric. And also, please, all government and municipality buses and trucks have to become electric within the next few years. They need to lead by example.
I think, Marc, I really like what you just said, and I think we have a good example amongst us three, in the panel here, because to facilitate the adoption of the school buses with Louis' equipment and Marc's equipment, we came together and we said, is there still a barrier for a school bus operator to purchase the truck? And one of the barriers clearly associated with the logistics of the charging, to make sure the software, to make sure that we'll optimize this from a customer standpoint. So we put ourselves together and we said, can we offer something to the customer, from their perspective? And we'll be doing a project starting this summer with an operator to say, okay, we'll be paying for the infrastructure. We'll be putting it on a OPEX standpoint, and we'll be managing the recharge to make sure that you won't have these power peaks. And we'll even be converting the cost per kilowatt hour into a cost per mile, which speaks to them. So that's another barrier that's not tangible. That's not an asset, but that's in the operation world that we are able, by working together, all three of us, to facilitate for school operators. So I think that's a good example.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And sorry, Logan. Yeah, this is a perfect example. I was talking about the partnership we have with utilities, of course, with manufacturer like Leon, but we can bring it to the table. We can facilitate, again, the end user, the customer, to make it happen. So great example at a smaller scale that can be scaled at a global scale. So
I'm going to stick with you there, but actually opening up the floor to questions, because I see various ones coming through, as well as actually potential customers in the chat as well, and contact details. So don't leave this before you've taken down those email addresses. But Louis, a question from Titus Brennickmeyer. Apologies for the pronunciation, but when will you be able to use the electric charge of car batteries, or let's extend it to bus batteries and truck batteries, to feed into the grid for the management of the grid? So I mean, lots of you, all four of you could probably answer this, but Louis, let's start with you, and then others can take a shot.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's a great example of collaboration. We need to have the cars, the trucks, to be able to put the energy back to the grid. And I'm sure Marc has something to say into this, but we're preparing the infrastructure. There is standards that are being developed, ISO 15118, which is a standard to make sure our infrastructure is ready to put the energy back in the grid. But again, it brings us to the collaboration with utilities. This is important, that as we we deploy infrastructure, and charging at home is always neglected because we talk about public charging, but this is where 80% of charging occurs. So as we're thinking about in the next 10 years getting to large scale deployment, we need to work with utilities to make sure we can manage, and it can be just slowing the charging, speeding up the charging. And as the cars will be capable of returning energy to the grid, we'll be ready at that point to even have even more value for utilities operator, energy provider.
And Simon, this touch, well, I won't say what it is because you look like you're about to leap in anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a utility standpoint, it's a fact that the network of tomorrow will be different from the network of today. First, we'll have the integration of a lot of renewable energy sources. We'll have all of these connected objects like vehicles, for example, or thermostat or solar panels that will be re-injecting energy into the network. I believe we'll see energy exchange not only between people and the network, but between people themselves as well. And there's also this desire of autonomy that the individual will have, a resilience that they want to have in their own households or in their own business. That will really put batteries at the heart of the network of tomorrow, being a large storage battery and a microgrid, or using the energy that's stored in vehicles when it's not required. So I strongly believe that batteries will really be at the heart of tomorrow's network because of that, to balance the loads and to provide additional resilience, especially with the climate change. If you look at the extreme events that we have today, it will bring more and more extreme events, and I think that's going to be a good way to secure yourself. If you know that you have enough energy in your home because of you have a wall battery, or you have your car that you can connect, so you won't be missing electricity.
Logan, if I may, I think the importance of the cross-sector decarbonization is really key, and we need to touch this today. As we move to a greener economy, we need to make two shifts. One in mobility, electrification, like we touched, but the other one will be a major shift from oil-based brown molecules to game-changing green molecules, because it's not just about mobility. It's about all goods we have around us, including plastic, paint, textile, because the production of oil, it's not just for cars, it's for all goods. And we need absolutely to have these different levels of intervention in terms of investment, because without the real substitution for circular economy, will be difficult to produce without new greener molecules for our economy. And I think it's the second level, probably in 5 years, will be an amazing topic for Bloomberg New Energy Finance. But in my perspective, the call for electrification, it's a super big call for circular economy at the end of the process. And it will be part of our challenge.
Indeed. And I think that speaks to this world is becoming more exciting and more complicated. That plays well. But Marc, actually, I'd love to hear from you on, like, when sort of Lion Electric has a sort of compelling proposition on a sort of total cost of ownership, and after sort of subsidies, you can sort of, well, your order book is growing, and so there's clearly appetite, just in terms of how you use an electric bus or an electric truck over the coming years. But when you think around that cross-sector sort of piece, are you hearing customers ask about vehicle to grid or resilience? Is that sort of part of the proposition that you already talk about, or is this something sort of further down the line?
That's a very good question, Logan. Most of the total cost of ownership calculation right now are being done without any V2G or V2B, because it's also vehicle to building, right? It could be V2B, it could be V2G. And so the TCO in most of the cases, especially on the truck side, is favorable in most of the cases. If you are looking at what's happening on the school bus side, the school bus is probably the perfect example for V2G, and we do have pilots right now with Con Edison and Florida Power and Light as well, where they don't use, most of the times, they don't use those buses during the weekends, and they don't use them during the summertime as well, which is a perfect example on how you can do V2G, on those buses. So the relationship with the school bus districts and the utilities is coming very key. And this is what we're doing now. So we have pilots. We are fine-tuning the technology as we speak. But before very long, though, I think the V2G calculation will become part of the TCO calculation.
I'm totally agree with that. I have a chance to revise over 800 deals this year, and majority of them in mobility, and V2G is clearly a topic. No question about that, Mark.
But I think what stands out there is there's always, when we started looking at this a few years ago, you would add so many pieces together to try and make a compelling sort of business case. And then now, as technology's improved and batteries have become cheaper, or wind and solar, if we sort of extend this, the great thing is you can make the core business case simpler, and it still stands on its own 2 feet. And then these are wonderful additions, I guess, and they do become more central, but it's nice to be able to, I guess, differentiate between the simplicity of message, which I think has played a role in terms of uptake, but also the some more powerful sort of integration elements. So scanning a few questions, there's a number of them asking for expansion into South America and Central America. So lots for all of you to do in terms of new factories and charging infrastructure, and no doubt energy storage systems as well. But a couple of questions actually. Let's have a look. A couple of questions for you, Marc, on when can investors expect to hear updates on the US factory expansion plan and on Amazon? And also there was another sort of follow-up, and could you provide more details on what will be done in the Innovation Center at the battery plant?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the US factory, yeah, we've been working on this, for a while, and we are very close to the let's say to the finish line, and we should be making an announcement within the next few weeks. And there's only a few states, that are still, on the let's say on the short list. And let me just say, for now that this announcement obviously, will be exciting, but it's coming very shortly. And with respect to the other question about the Innovation Center, well, we're all about innovation, as are, everybody on the panel right now. And this is our bread and butter. I mean, we're investing a lot of money. So far, we've invested about $200 million in innovation, R&D in the last 12 years. And this pace is going up right now. So the Innovation Center, what it is doing, the R&D people will, most of them will be at the same place working on those platforms. So we think it's going to be a lot more efficient. And also it will be a place for the customer to do some ride and drives. They will be able to do that. They will be able also to see how the batteries are being built, because the Innovation Center is just beside the battery plant that will be built also very shortly. So they will be able to see all of that at the same place. And I think it makes things a little bit more simple. As you said earlier, Logan, in terms of the TCO calculation, it's a little bit the same thing in terms of technology. I mean, complex technology need to be simple, right? So it needs to be, for the customer, they need to understand what this is all about. And by going through our Innovation Center and the battery plant, they will be able to have a good look at all those technologies in one place.
I think the other side of the equation, Logan, it's probably the investors, because as you know, we have a lot of enthusiasts. As you can see, we are all very enthusiastic about that, but we need to deliver. We need to deliver, and we need to avoid this potential green bubble. And I think we need to speak about that too, because our entrepreneurs, they have a commitment in terms of results, and they need to deliver. And if we don't want to be in a very scary position in 2-3 years, we need to be coherent. We need to be rigorous. We need to be clear. And probably we need to change a bit the mindset of the investors. Because more and more we are speaking about ESG. It's not just about simple return. And we need to have another appreciation of risk. You said before, it's complicated. I prefer it's more complex. And complexity calls different way to assess the risk. And it's the change we need in the financial world. It's make sure the bonus of our people who are investor, manager, it's not just about returns. It's about extra financial returns. And it's the way to take if we want to change this world. And if we want to support the lion and the ad energy of this world, it's make sure we have other tools in our pocket to understand the new world.
Indeed, and if my inbox is anything to go by, that sort of interest from that community is definitely growing. Yeah. So we're running up against time. I've a question each for Louis and then Simon, and then we'll do quick fire. So let's keep it snappy, I say as I drag on with my question. But the question for Louis is around what do you see as your role in not just building out the charging infrastructure, but ensuring that it's that the electricity that is used there is coming from renewable sources rather than fossil based. Does the onus for that sit with you, at least in part? Or how do you think about that?
You mean our ability to make sure that the fuel we're going to give through, I would say, our chargers is a renewable one, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting and really important question. Like a Quebec-born company doesn't have those kind of questions, I would say, but definitely it's something going into the US. There's ways, again, because utilities are collaborating together, that we can make sure that the fuel that will be available through our chargers is renewable. So nothing really, concrete to announce, but this is definitely something close to our mind. Again, we're all together. The clock is ticking to 2050. We need to make the energy transition, and our role is to collaborate together to make sure we meet our target. And it's not only to buy electric cars, to use charging stations, and to invest into company like that, but it's to make sure we're gonna make that transition. Consuming less, consuming the right fuel, and definitely we're going to play a role in making sure that fuel is green and clean from our chargers.
Perfect, thank you. And yeah, switching gears, Simon, the EV Low website highlights LF batteries are designed with recycling in mind. Can you share some reflections on the state of recycling technologies and infrastructure in Canada?
Yeah, I think Andrée-Lise mentioned the circular economy. To me, that's something that we had in mind when we designed Evlo. We're more than 99% recyclable as a unit, but we need to think circular economy more and more. We're putting how we're going to recycle the electric car batteries today. It's not possible to do it in Quebec. I can tell you that, and we need to work on this clearly. Yeah. And it's the same thing, with all of the electronic components that are in the recharge stations. So we need to, as a group, focus on this, because it's something that's otherwise will be faced in 5 years and will be a major issue. So we need to work on it today. Perfect.
And there are a whopping 40 questions in the chat, but we're actually going to switch to a quick fire round. So Andrée-Lise, starting with you, but it will be same question for everyone. What is the thing you're most looking forward to in 2021?
In our case, certainly electrification, but software application in energy efficiency. We have already a larger portfolio. We need to balance our risk. And circular economy, it's part of our mandate too, and we think we can do something very interesting. We have a chance to be exposed around the world with amazing co-investors, and we have a deal flow from the world. Just to give you a perspective, last 2 years, we revised over 180 deals in the battery sector. It's amazing, actually. And we will see a lot of consolidation. It's not just about to have a look on the shiny object. It's understand where the market will go. As a portfolio manager, it's understand who will buy who and what kind of building we can do with different companies, because merging time will come. It's what we are seeing in our crystal ball.
Andrée-Lise, I'm going to cut you off there, but it sounds like 2021 will be busy.
It's 2021. We have 3 months. Essentially, at cycle, we have numbers of SPACs in our portfolio in process. I don't know if all will succeed, but I can say something to you. I never saw the bankers in New York and California working so hard 24 hours a day for merger, acquisition, SPACs, IPO. It's an amazing time, but we need to be prudent. It can be, I said that, it can be a bubble too.
Okay, thank you. Simon?
For me, Energy Innovation Summit that we're going to have in the fall with the open innovation and bringing together the entire ecosystem of Quebec. So definitely that's what I'm looking for.
Excellent. A good next step for people to sort of look forward to. Louis?
Absolutely.
I would say 25% of our growth will come from the States. We're well aligned with that. And on a more personal note, we are 215 employees. We will almost double this year, which is going to be an incremental or amazing ride. And I always like to build my team. So looking forward for that growth as well.
Incredible few months ahead, it seems. And Marc, the final word sits with you.
Thank you, Logan. Well, keep selling and delivering our electric trucks and buses. And also we are taking to market this year the Lion8 tractor. A lot of customers are expecting this one, and also the Lion D, the flat nose school bus, for a full lineup of school buses as well. So very exciting times. Thank you, Logan. Thanks everyone for your time. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, to all of my panelists, and crucially to everyone who dialed in, asked great questions, and I'll take a look at them and see how we can respond over the coming days. Thank you, and let's leave it there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.